Global Business Report on Arise News. In their new Digital Channel Scorecard report, global consulting firm KPMG says the stakes have never been higher when it comes to businesses delivering their promise to customers as consumers become more attuned to using apps or everyday life events, from social connections to social networking, online news, shopping online, working online. They're expecting nothing less from businesses which they are associated with. Now, these businesses need to reimagine how their user experience design principles are factored into every aspect of interaction with customers on their digital platforms. Joining me to discuss this is Boye Ademola, partner and lead digital transformation, KPMG. Boye, thank you for joining us on the Global Business Report. Your report focuses on Nigeria's commercial banks, so this digital scorecard. What was your reason for looking at the financial sector for the report?
Yeah, thank you, Rotus. The financial sector, the commercial banks are the heart of the digital transformation that we're seeing in the Nigerian economy. So if you take a look at all sectors of the economy, we are seeing a powering of payment transactions in particular, which is then enabling other sectors of the economy. So for instance, you can make toll payments, you can pay for movies, you can, move money around the economy as a result of the payment platforms that the banks have developed over the years. So for us, the role of the banks are really central when you look at retail, which was the thrust of the KPMG Digital Channel Scorecard for 2020. And therefore, that was the reason why we then decided to focus on this 17 commercial banks, but they also have quite quite big retail footprints.
Excellent. So why do, I think we had that question up on the screen from your report, why do digital channels matter?
Well, digital channels matter because they are the endpoint of all that organizations are doing today from a digital transformation perspective. As you are aware, we're in an age where the transformation requirements for organizations have been heightened as a result of COVID. And we've seen organizations embrace digital more as a result of the social distancing rules. We've seen physical restrictions over the last few months. So this digital transformation initiatives, the question really for organizations is, how do we measure it? How do we know we're making progress? What are the things that we need to pay attention to? And so for us at KPMG, as we focused on the banks, the real thrust of that report was, in a sense, to help measure the progress that has been made so far. Because ultimately, where you see and you can measure the progress is on the channels. That's the end point of all that you do from a digital transformation perspective.
All right, great stuff. So I think we'll put up your UX, that's user experience pyramid. Can you walk us through the pyramid and with the percentages that you have up there as well?
Well, this just puts a structured way of looking at customer experience and user experience. And I can tell you, Rotos, if you look at a customer and when they do come on your channels, what are the things that are important from that customer perspective? The first is that, you got to deliver the functionality to the customer. So if a customer has come to open a new bank account and wants to do a transaction, customer has to be able to do that. And that's why at the bottom of the pyramid with the highest score of 70% is functionality. So the functionality has to work from a customer's perspective. The other thing that is very close, to that, the next one is minimalization. All right. So, when we talk about minimalization in digital, we're talking about, in a sense, simplicity and intuitiveness, because when the customer comes to a channel, you don't have the opportunity to teach the customer how to find your product, how to find a certain functionality. So simplicity and intuitiveness, really important. The next one is efficiency. How many steps does the customer have to take, to get a particular objective completed? Personalization is about being more contextual with the customers, and consistency and aesthetics refer to the look and feel, all right, of the platforms.
Great stuff. Okay, also the interesting survey. You have a 2019 banking survey with some interesting results here. So looking at the chart at the top there, 85% of people have never used chatbots, and then 65% have never used internet banking. 42% never used mobile banking. Meanwhile, on the flip side, 62% use ATMs at least once a week. Does this survey you took in 2019, does it tell us that more work needs to be done to get improved usage in those aforementioned channels?
Absolutely. I think more work needs to be done. ATMs, agency banking, branches, really important for where we are in Nigeria. But, our view at KPMG is that if we're really going to make a significant leap from where we are today, we need to do much better, all right, on the other channels. And I'll give an example. We have just about 44 million customers that are banked today in the in the whole banking system, 44 million BVNs, 44 million unique customers. And, but we have over 100 million adults, all right? So that tells you that you still have a lot of people outside the financial system. The question is, how are we going to get to these people? And, the answer, which is not different from other places in the world, is thinking mobile first, all right? A lot of these people, we know that probably 80 to 100 million adults in Nigeria carry a mobile phone, all right? So therefore, it's mobile first. It's important for organizations to completely relook experience, particularly around, mobile and USSD as channels. Internet banking, chatbots, and the other channels are also important, but from a customer perspective and what we're seeing in this particular market, I would say that, the mobile, the USSD are really important channels for banks and indeed for other organizations to pay attention to as they shape their digital agenda.
Okay, fantastic. Now, based on that, I still want to stick on this because on the same survey, 75% have never used a contact center. Are contact centers in danger of becoming, I guess, extinct as technology advances, or are they still, needed to some degree?
Yeah, Rotis, let me tell you what we found out as we did the Digital Channel Scorecard. We had issues with getting resolution when we contacted these contact centers. When we logged issues, sometimes our emails were not answered in 24 hours. Some people got back to us after 72 hours. We had issues with wait time on phone calls for calls to contact center. We had issues with when we tried to engage on chatbots, and, this was relatively across many of the banks that we looked at. And so I think there's a need for banks to relook the whole contact center initiative. As we scale retail, we really need contact centers that are so much more digital. And we argue that it's really important that we integrate chatbots, all right, into every channel that we have from a contact center perspective. So the contact centers are not just our typical infrastructure where we have the phone systems and we have a few people. It's also enabling that with chatbots and technologies that can allow a lot of the questions that customers are asking for to be responded to in real time digitally, and leaving just a few things that really require person-to-person interaction to stay that way. So there's a big message around the industry. Contact centers are still relevant, but there's a big message around digitizing those contact centers to ensure that it can support the banks as they scale.
All right, fantastic. You also have a display here, a comparison of online account opening features across digital banks. So mobile banking and USSD, they lead the way, while the chatbots and internet banking are behind. So again, referencing your survey, where 85% of people never use chatbots, 65% never use internet banking, will banks still be motivated to improve availability of the channels that are, I guess, lagging behind it?
Well, it's an important argument that is going on in banks today. And you have to be commercial with digital. I think it's important that as banks put in this investment, they can see where the returns are going to come from. So people will argue with you that Internet banking, the adoption of internet banking is on the decline. Chatbots, relatively young in our market, but perhaps because of the millennials, they're a very chatty generation. It's important to invest in chatbots. But mobile and USSD, without a doubt, are the channels of choice if you look at in terms of the volumes and adoption. However, there's the whole omni-channel paradigm now, all right? And the omni-channel is really about delivering experience to customers, regardless of the channels that they choose to engage you from or to engage you on. And so that's really important, as banks look at their strategy to really ask that question, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to just serve on mobile, or we want to embrace an omni-channel sort of strategy to ensure that regardless of the channel of choice from a customer, we're delivering good products, we're delivering good services, and the experience is top-notch?
All right, great. I wanted to ask you about KYC, but running out of time, so let me jump ahead to retail lending. There's a section of the report that talks about retail lending and how the time may be ripe for banks to explore this opportunity. About poor penetration of retail lending. Can you speak on that, please?
Yeah. Penetration of retail lending is still really low. It's one of the lowest, again, in Africa. And, what has changed? I think three things have come together on retail lending in recent times. The first one is around the technologies themselves. So you have a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to help with things like risk scoring, with credit application scoring, and so on and so forth. The second thing is we have a proliferation of data, all right? So we're generating tons of data every day. Data is available, all right, to be consumed via APIs. For instance, you can get location data today from Google. You can get, when a business opens and when it shuts. You can find out where consumers stay and so on and so forth. So there's tons of data out there. That's something that has come together. But I think perhaps the most important is, the new regulation from the central bank working with the banks to implement the global standing instruction. And that's really, really, for us, it's a game changer. Because what the GSI does is, from a bank's perspective, it helps to manage the risk of credit default. Any defaulting customer, all right, banks can recover their funds for any defaulting customer from any bank account within the banking industry, all right? So this, we think, if you look at these three things coming together, we think it's a good time for banks to relook the whole retail lending play and, to try and do something significant in that space. You can draw parallels with Kenya, which has been like Nigeria for a number of years, where, retail lending was very low. And then we saw Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, and NCBA come together to develop a product called Fuliza, which has been a real success. In just about a year, Fuliza, which is a retail lending product, a retail overdraft product, has seen over 10 million Kenyans benefit from that product. So we think that, again, the time is right, and banks really need to look at this in view of what's changing in the landscape.
All right, this is my final question, Boye, and briefly, if you can, self-service and the importance of self-service in about 30, 40 seconds, if you can, please.
Well, self-service is the way to essentially transform for an incumbent bank into a digital bank. Because, self-service just means that banks need to go on a journey or accelerate their journey to empower customers, all right, to perform and consume products and services on the channels. It sounds relatively simple, but it's because products and services are evolving all the time. Banks need to really, really reimagine this and ensure that, regardless of the product, regardless of the service, they're working with their customers to empower them to deliver this of the channel. That's self-service agenda.
Great stuff. Boye Ademola, partner and lead digital transformation, KPMG. Thank you so much for taking us through your digital scorecard report. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News.